Good morning, team. Hope you are all feeling well this morning. I know that there are a couple of you joining me live, so look forward to seeing you here. And we are going to be talking about using watercolor pencils today. So I'll just make sure that those who are joining us are online, and then we will get started. And I am going to post this up afterwards, so you can let members of your team know that they can watch it later if they couldn't be here today. So, watercolour pencils, I think these are really underrated with Stampin' Up! Because they have so many benefits and we just don't use them enough. So I'm just going to tell you about the benefits first of all. Well, they come in 2 packs, so we've got the watercolour pencils pack 1, which has got 13 pencils in it, including a white one, which is quite cool. And then the second assortment number 2, has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in it. So 13 in the first one, 10 in the second one. The first one costs $38 and the second one is $30. So that's the first benefit for using colouring watercolour pencils, is the cost. You've got all these colours, so 23 colours altogether, for like $68. If you buy both packs, 30 for one, 38 for the other. Whereas you would buy a couple of you'd get this many blends pens. I'm just pulling my pens out. You'd get that many colours for the same price as you get all those colours there. So you can see the cost. Watercolour pencils, very good, easy to transport. That's all you're transporting, to have all those colours. Whereas, you know, I showed you before with just 6 colour pens, you know, how much hard, imagine if you had 23 of these colours, how much more it is to transport, or if it's ink pads, how much more it is to transport. So yeah, they're multifunctional, and I'm going to show you some different uses to get different looks today. So yeah, you're able to blend colours with them, and they're great for fine line details as well. So multifunctional, easy to transport, easy, cost effective, and they are easy to control. And this is why a lot of the artists like using watercolour pencils. It's just that you can control the colour and where it goes. If you are new to watercolouring, then pencils is a good way to start. Now I just want to show you something that you might not have noticed, but they've all got numbers on them. So let me just bring this closer to the screen. 4, 5, and it goes right up to the second pack, which is let me try and see if there's, have I opened this one? Balmy Blue. Is it 21? See, so the first packs are named 1 to 13. Second pack is named 14 down to 23 with the gorgeous grape there. That makes it easier to make sure that you've got them all when you're packing them away again. So, right, we're going to get started with some techniques. And one of the things that Stampin' Up! Recommends is to do a colour swatch. So this, I've just started doing it this morning, but it just shows you what the colours actually look like in real life. And it's good to have the swatch, because this Calypso Coral, the ends of the pens aren't always accurate to what the colours are. I feel this is a little bit more pinky rather than orangey coral compared to the cardstock. But it's good to have a colour swatch and see what it looks like when it's wet, and then leave it when it's dry so you can see the difference. And do it so it goes from dark to light. I'll just give you an example of that. Right, so let me see. We're going to do the blue colour. So this is just called blue, actually. So if you press lightly and use the side of the colouring pencil and then use more of the point and press darker, you get the different tones of colour. So it's all about how hard you press. You want to go in the same direction all the time so you don't get a mess of pencil strokes, because you do see the pencil strokes using these compared to using your blend pens. So I'm just going to do this again on this side, so I've got a sample of when it's dry as well, and then you press harder. If you want fine lines, so if I want to do a line there, you use a tip. It's really good to keep these pencils sharp, unless you're doing background colouring in and you want to use the side more, just to get that lighter colour at the side. And then if you are using your water painters, so they come in a set of 3 with different size nibs. You've got a fine one there. I tend to use the medium one the most. And then you've got this broad one, which is good for washes when you're trying to wet your whole page, to get your whole page wet, or a big area. So you always start from the light side and drag it over to the dark. The light side and drag it to the dark. And then we're just going to do a little bit more on the dark here. I'm just going to wipe my brush. It's good to have paper towel. Keep a paper towel handy, and yeah. So then you can see the difference when you are blending it with water compared to just the dry. You sort of get rid of some of those pencil strokes and just blend the colour out. I'll show you a couple of pictures that I've already coloured in, and you can see the difference on how it works once you add the water to it. So some people like leaving it just dry, and I'll show you an example of that. One reason why it's good to leave it just dry as pencil is because if you are doing an image like this horse here and you are using the blends, you couldn't do the shadowing where I've got from dark to light on that horse, but with the pencils you can, because the blends, it's all just one colour. I mean, you've got your dark blend and light blend, but if I wanted this whole horse brown, yes, I could do that, but I've left some of his face white, some of his body white. So, and then I've just used 2 brown colouring in pencils, watercolour pencils, and got a little bit of shade in there. So yeah, the light and the dark. So pencils are good for that. And then here's one I did of the bird, and it's just with pencils on watercolour paper. Now what I was going to say about the watercolour paper, so it's got 2 sides. It's got a side that's more textured and a side that's smooth. I personally like to use the smooth side, and watercolour paper is definitely the way to go, because if you're using it just on ordinary card, you will notice a bit of pulling when you're using watercolour. So I just want to show you the difference in these birds. This one I just did with the pencils, and this one I did with the pencils and then did the watercolour over top, and you can see the vibrancy. There's definitely more vibrant colour. Look at its face and its body. You can definitely see there's more colour in there. Now this is put on to just normal thick white card, and because I put water on here just to flick some pencil shavings over, it's got a bit wet and it bubbles and the paper lifts when it gets too wet. That's why you want to use watercolour paper, which I did for this bird, and then I did the branch underneath. So I'm just going to do the branch on this one and just show you how I did that. So I'll see if I can zoom in. Oh, it doesn't look like it's going to let me. Anyway, I will just start with this branch. So all I did was draw a branch, colour it in. So I'm just using the side of my watercolour pencil, and you get more control, and then colour it in with the edge. Well, when I say I'm using the side, it's not very sharp. If it was very sharp, I'd use the point and get some nice fine lines in there. I'm going to then add my watercolour, and then I'm going to add some colour on top. So there's whole lots of different techniques for using these watercolours. You can do dry on dry, like just colour it in, don't use any water. You can do this is wet on dry, because I've done it dry and then added the water afterwards. Once that's dry, I'm going to show you a couple other techniques, but I'll just put it to the side there. But now I'm going to show you wet on wet. I'll get this one. So if we wet it all first, so just put water. Sometimes you have to squeeze these brushes to get the water to come right through to the end. Let's come on my paper. There we go. We'll just add it onto there. So I've just brushed water all across there, and then I'm going to pick up some with my pencil. So you can actually pick up colour from the edge here. You don't get a lot of colour on, but then you can start painting straight away, and because it's already wet, see, it's just going to flow onto that. So that's wet on wet. Yeah, basically you can do dry on dry, dry on wet, wet on wet, or wet on dry. So yeah, lots of different ways of doing the watercolour techniques. But I'm going to show you my most funnest way, and this is why I think they're so good to transport and take, because if you want to do any quick colouring, if you just have your set of pencils, I'm going to come in later and do a bit more on there. But see this one here, I've already done watercolour on it earlier. I can now add some pencil over top and just do a little bit of highlighting. And I don't even have to use it wet, I can use it dry and just use my pencil for adding some extra depth around there. But you do need a sharp pencil, mine's not very sharp. Yeah, so the things with this are sharp pencil, watercolour paper, if you want to use them wet. If you want to do watercolour, you need watercolour paper. And you need Stays-On ink, or what's the other ink? The new one that's come out, the hybrid one. I'm just going to move this paper over a little bit, so I've wet it a little bit there. We're going to do some green, and I'm going to show you a cool, easy way to do this. So if you just get a block and you draw your pencil over your block, and this way you won't get any brush strokes. So instead of you drawing your pencil on your paper, draw it on your block like that, and then we're going to pick up some colour from here. So I'll just get my water painter, and just, it's got a little bit of pink on from before, so I'm just rinsing it. Okay, and now we're just going to pick up some green from here. So we're just wetting all that, and we've got our ink now. So if we didn't have a green ink pad, then this is the way to do it. What do you think about that? Nice and easy way to use colour, isn't it? And then if we want to go in again and put a little bit darker colour over top of that, so we can use our pencil. I just use an ordinary sharpener. I'm just going to sharpen this one. Right. So I'm using the dry pencil on top just to add extra colour. And these pencils work really good on top of blends as well. So if I had this flower all coloured with the blends, I'll use this one. I'm just doing where I want the darker colour first, and then I'm going to go over all of it with the lighter colour. What colour is this? Pretty in pink. It's quite apricot-y. I think it's going to work well with my Calypso Coral pencil. When it dries, we should see a bit of those highlights come through, but I'm going to do a little bit more with the pencil and it should show you. So this is the Calypso Coral pencil, so if I want to add a little bit of highlights in here. So the colouring pencils work well with blends if you just want to go over top of your blends and add a bit more depth of colour. Then use your colouring in pencils to do it. I'm not going to do the whole lot, but I'll just show you a little bit of what I've done here, and you can see. And then on the leaves again, and what I did there. So yeah, it works with blends, it works with just the watercolour going over top. Also, you can flick colour on. I will come back to this one here, and I started before. I'm just going to get the Early Espresso pencil, and we're going to add a bit of darker brown. Now this is the one that I've already watercoloured on, and then if we want, we can get our stamping marker. So just a stamping right marker, and we can draw underneath it with that black marker so that it matches our stamped image. So you can do a lot of drawing, and that's how I made that one there, the leaf, just with watercolour pencils. I'm just going to show you about these little flecks on here. So what I did was I had my page a bit wet, so I'm just going to put some water here. Just make sure my brush is wet enough, and then we're going to flick a bit of colour on, and you just use the edge of your scissors, and you're going to scrape a little bit of colour onto that wet page, and you get this speckled effect. And it will dry with that speckled look. So it's quite wet with water still. You can see all the water over here, but as it dries, it will leave this speckled effect, and that's what I did on this card here. I'm going to cover up this wet patch though, because it wasn't watercolour paper. It's gone sort of soaked through, but I will cover it with some pearls or something like that. So let me just see if I've covered some of the points that I wanted to make. I wanted to tell you about making the colour swatch, which we've done, so you can get a guideline as to the true colours of each pencil and what it looks like when it's wet, what it looks like when it's dry, what it looks like when it's got lots of colour as opposed to just a smidgen of colour. When you're colouring in, another thing to remember is that it's good to colour in the same direction. So if you don't really like the brush stroke look, where you can actually see the pencil strokes, you're best to colour, if you want a big area, you're best, well, I just go across my page lightly like that, in the same direction. You don't want to keep changing directions, because then you get a mess with all the different strokes. If you, and I tend to use the side of my brush, if you're doing a smaller area like where the bird's head was, I tend to do little circles like this, because then you don't get the stroke marks as much. And then if you're going to pull in the colour, you always start from the light and bring it down to the dark. And see, it does blend the colour pretty well, and you haven't got a lot of lines there. It's honestly just a playing around thing and practicing and just getting the feel of what it all feels like. But a good thing with using making the colour swatch up is that you do get to have a play, and you do get to feel what it all feels like. So it gives you a good idea before you start. If you've made a colour swatch, it'll give you a good idea. You can layer colours together. I'll just go back with this blue, and we'll add a little bit of fresh freesia to it, and we'll see if we can make a bit of a darker purple here by adding these two colours. And let's blend them together and see what it looks like. Get this really nice. So you can make lots of your own colours up by just blending colours together. And you can blend it on paper, or you could blend it on your block just by drawing them both on your block and getting the two different colours together like that. So yeah, you do have a lot of opportunity just by playing around. So yeah, make your colour swatch, layer colours together, play with different colours, see how they mix together, see what it looks like when you're just using them dry as opposed to wet. But just make sure that you've got really good quality watercolour paper, and Stampin' Up does sell very good quality paper. You can also use blender pens instead of the brush. So these are sold blender pens in a set of 3. They're double-ended, and both ends are exactly the same. So I'm going to come back to this bird and use this pen to just blend some of this colour in. I think the brush gives a better look overall, because it's a bit wetter and it blends it better, but some people like these pens because it gives more control. So I've just done the blue part, and it does look smoother already than the green, which I haven't blended in yet, or the pink. And then to clean your brush, you just wipe it on your scrap paper till it comes through clean. You can also use the brush to pick up some colour. So if I'm going to the blender brush, the same as what we did with the paintbrush, pick up some colour from here, and I will put a little bit in the centre of these flowers. Or do it this way. and blend. So yeah, it's a bit like using the paintbrush. I feel like it's a little bit more controlled. So yeah, it's just really playing around with it and seeing how it works and what you like, what style you like. Another thing for blender pens, so I'm just going to wipe all that colour off, is that sometimes I use them on stamps. Like for example, this bird stamp. I did have the other bird stamp around. I'll just get this one out. So this bird, let me get the big one out. I recently made a card like this for a friend of mine, and I wanted these birds on the front to match the bird that was inside the card. I'm just going to stamp it and just show you what I did with the blender pen. So I inked it up with black ink. This ink pad's pretty dry. Let me try the other one. Right. That's better. Now these birds have got these lines around their face that I didn't want, because this bird has got no line around. So I'm using my blend pen and I'm going to take that line off. I'll bring it closer to the camera so you can see. So I'm just taking the ink off that line here. I'm going to use the other end as well for this one. So if there's any words you don't want on a word stamp, this is where I would use this blender pen, because you can remove ink just on a fine line. That's the ink all coming off there, just on a fine piece. If you wanted an open eye, you could remove the eye, the ink on the eye, and then... Right, so where am I going to stamp this? Let me get a piece of paper. So I've taken away the lines on the birds' faces, and now they look similar to that bird there. If I hadn't done that, I'm going to stamp on straight onto this paper and you'll see the difference. You can see the lines on the bird's faces just there, and that one with no line. So yeah, for removing ink, blender pens are great. I'll show you another use for blender pens, and then I'll just tell you one more tip and then we're finished. But really, the watercolour pencils, I love them, and it's just a fact of having a play. Start with your colour swatch. Make sure you use Stays On ink or that new hybrid ink pad, because as soon as you add water, it's going to make your if you use Memento, it's going to make it run. Right, so I'm just going to show you one more tip. Clean up some of this mess here. So here is just a normal card, and I've stamped in pumpkin pie onto a petal pink card, and then I'm just going to bring out by going over top of the pumpkin pie ink and moistening it. It does wet it, and then you can bring out some of the colour into your paper with your blends. So all I'm doing is going over the lines and bringing it up into the card a little bit to just add a little bit of colour from what's already there. I'll lift this up and show you. So these blend pens are just made with glycerol. I can't remember, there's a couple of ingredients in them, but they're acid free and they're safe to use around your archival things. If you want to find out more about what's in each of the products, you can go online, and Stampin' Up! Has a really good resource. I'll tell you about it in a second, but I'll just bring this up to the camera so you can see how I've just pulled some colour off my blender pen. So it's just taken colour from the stamp lines and just dragged it out a little bit. So that's another use of a blender pen. Okay, so if you go to Stampin' University, then click on Become a Product Expert. And then if you go to clicking on to Colouring Tools, it will tell you all about the water painters and what's in them. That set of 3, like, you know, wide brush, narrow brush, that sort of thing. Or if you go Stampin' University, Become a Product Expert, and then go to Inks and Colouring Mediums, you'll find out more about the pencils and the blender pens. So I'll just give you some more information of what I've told you today. So any questions, let me know, and I can also add the answers to the questions on the tutorial that I print out and send to you. But hopefully this has been a little bit of help, and it will encourage you to play around with these pencils some more. Yeah, I really love them, and I hope you do too. Thanks for watching. Bye.